You work 40 hours a week, you earn $50,000 a year, you budget carefully, you save what you can, but somehow, you're always broke. Your parents could buy a house on one income. You can barely afford rent on two. What changed? Here's what they don't tell you. Your government is systematically stealing your wealth. Not through taxes you can see, through financial manipulation you can't. It's legal, it's sophisticated, and it's happening right now, every single day. In 1971, your dollar could buy what $7.50 buys today? That means $50,000 in 1971. Had the purchasing power of $375,000 today. Your grandparents weren't richer because they worked harder. They were richer because their money wasn't being silently stolen through inflation. This is the story of how governments use 5 financial tricks to transfer wealth from your pocket to theirs. How they make you poorer while claiming to help you. How they've rigged the system so that no matter how hard you work, you're always falling behind. By the end of this, you'll understand why you're broke. And it has nothing to do with your avocado toast. Imagine this. You save $10,000. You put it in the bank. You feel responsible. A year later, you still have $10,000. But now it only buys $9,300 worth of goods. Where did that $700 go? The government took it through inflation. Inflation isn't some natural phenomenon like rain or gravity. It's manufactured. Created deliberately by central banks printing money. And it's the most effective tax ever invented because most people don't even realize they're repaying it. Here's how it works. The government needs money. They have 3 options. Raise taxes, cut spending, or print money. Raising taxes is politically unpopular. Cutting spending upsets voters. But printing money? That's invisible. Most people don't understand it. So that's what they do. When the government prints money, they don't hand it to you. They give it to banks and corporations first. Those entities spend it before prices rise. By the time the new money reaches ordinary people, prices have already increased. You're paying more for everything, but your salary hasn't changed. The Federal Reserve's official inflation target is 2% annually. They say this is healthy, but 2% annual inflation means your money loses half its value every 35 years. If you save $100,000 for retirement, it'll only buy $50,000 worth of goods when you retire. The government silently confiscated half your savings. But here's the real trick. Actual inflation is much higher than reported. The government calculates inflation using the Consumer Price Index or CPI, but they constantly change how they calculate it. When beef prices rise, they substitute chicken in the calculation. When rent increases, they use owner's equivalent rent instead of actual rents. The result? Official inflation says 3%, but your real costs increased by 8%. From 2020 to 2024, the government printed $5 trillion. That's more money than existed in the entire U.S. economy in 1980. Where did it go? To banks? To corporations? To government contractors? And you paid for it through higher prices at the grocery store. Your grandfather could buy a house for $20,000 in 1970. Today that same house costs $400,000. Did houses become 20 times better? No. The money became 20 times worse. That's not housing inflation. That's currency devaluation. And the government did it deliberately. The cruelest part. Inflation punishes savers and rewards debtors. If you saved $100,000, inflation makes it worthless. But if the government has $30 trillion in debt, inflation makes that debt easier to repay. They're stealing from you to pay their bills. You get a raise? You earn $5,000 more per year? You're excited, then tax season comes. Suddenly that $5,000 raise only put $2,800 in your pocket. What happened? You moved into a higher tax bracket. The government took the rest. But here's the deeper scam. Tax brackets aren't adjusted properly for inflation. This creates something called bracket creep. Your salary increases to keep pace with inflation, but you move into higher tax brackets anyway. You're not actually earning more in real terms, but you're paying higher tax rates. The government profits from their own inflation. In 1970, the top tax bracket started at $200,000. So that's $1.5 million in today's money. Now the top bracket starts at $578,000. The government lowered the threshold by 2/3 in real terms. They're taxing middle-class people at rates that used to only apply to the wealthy. But wait, it gets worse. Income tax only applies to earned income from work. Capital gains from investments are taxed at lower rates. If you work for your money, you pay 35%. If your money works for you, you pay 20%. This system ensures that wealthy people who make money from investments pay lower rates than working people who earn salaries. The standard deduction sounds generous. $13,854 individuals, but that's only 25% of the poverty line. You're being taxed on income you need just to survive. Meanwhile, corporations can deduct business expenses, lavish meals, private jets, luxury vehicles. The rules are written to favor the wealthy, and it's not just federal income tax. You also pay state income tax, property tax, sales tax, gas tax, payroll tax, social security tax, Medicare tax, capital gains tax, estate tax. When you add them all up, the average American pays over 40% of their income in taxes. That's more than medieval serfs paid to feudal lords. But here's what really exposes the scam. The Tax Foundation calculated that the average American works until April 16th just to pay their taxes. That's called Tax Freedom Day. You work 106 days out of 365 just to give money to the government. Nearly a third of your year, working for free. And what do you get for it? Crumbling infrastructure, underfunded schools, a healthcare system that bankrupts sick people. Meanwhile, the government spent $877 billion on defense in 2024. That's $2.4 billion per day, while telling you there's no money to fix the roads. Student loans, credit cards, mortgages, car loans, personal loans, payday loans. The average American owes $104,215. That's more than most people earn in 2 years. How did this happen? The government designed it this way. Let's start with student loans. In 1970, you could work a part-time summer job and pay for college. Tuition at a public university was $394 per year. Today, it's $10,662. That's a 2,600% increase. Why? Because the government started guaranteeing student loans. When colleges knew students could borrow unlimited amounts, they raised prices without limit. But here's the trap. Student loans can't be discharged in bankruptcy. The government made sure that in 2005. You can declare bankruptcy and walk away from credit card debt, medical bills, even gambling debts. But not student loans. You will pay them until you die. This was deliberate policy designed to ensure banks could lend without risk. The result? 43 million Americans owe $1.77 trillion in student debt. The average borrower owes $37,000. They're paying it off into their 40s and 50s. They can't buy houses, can't start businesses, can't save for retirement. They're trapped in a cycle of debt servitude, and the government profits from the interest. Credit cards are the same scam. The average interest rate is 24.37%. That's higher than most mob loan sharks charge. If you owe $10,000 on a credit card and make minimum payments, you'll pay for 12 years and pay $11,000 in interest alone. You'll pay double what you borrowed. But credit cards used to be restricted. In the 1970s, most states had usury laws, capping interest rates at 10 to 12%. The government says homeownership is the American dream, but it's really a 30-year wealth extraction scheme. You're not buying a home, you're renting it from the bank and the government until you've paid 3 times what it's worth. You're a responsible saver. You have $50,000 in a savings account. You're earning 0.5% interest. That's $250 per year. But inflation is 4%. You're losing $2,000 per year in purchasing power. Your savings account is making you poorer. This is called financial repression. And it's government policy. Financial repression is when the government keeps interest rates below inflation. This forces you to either accept losing money in savings accounts or take risks in the stock market. It's a deliberate policy designed to push people into riskier investments that generate tax revenue and inflate asset bubbles. From 2008 to 2022, interest rates were near zero. Savings accounts paid 0.01%. Money market accounts paid 0.05%. If you were a responsible saver, you lost money every single year. The government was punishing you for being responsible. Meanwhile, the government borrowed money at 2% and spent it freely. But the scam goes deeper. Banks borrow from the Federal Reserve at near zero rates. Then they lend to you at 7% for mortgages, 24% for credit cards, 10% for car loans. They're making enormous profits on the spread. And the government enables this through Federal Reserve policy. Pension funds are destroyed by financial repression. Pension funds need 7 to 8% returns to meet their obligations. When interest rates are 1%, they can't generate those returns safely, so they take bigger risks. They invest in stocks, real estate, private equity. When those investments fail, pensioners lose their retirement. This has already happened to millions of Americans. Social Security is the ultimate financial repression. You're forced to pay 12.4% of your income, half from you, half from your employer, into Social Security. The government promises to pay you back when you retire, but the Social Security Trust Fund doesn't actually exist. The government spent that money decades ago. Today's Social Security payments come from today's workers. It's a Ponzi scheme. If you could invest that 12.4% in a simple S&P 500 index fund instead, you'd retire with millions. But the government won't let you. They force you to participate in a system that pays negative real returns. And when it inevitably goes bankrupt, they'll raise the retirement age or cut benefits. You paid in your whole life, but you won't get back what you were promised. The government also manipulates interest rates to bail out banks. When banks make bad loans and face collapse, the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates to zero. This allows banks to borrow cheaply and repair their balance sheets, but it punishes savers. Your grandmother on a fixed income sees her interest income disappear. The bank CEO gets a bonus. This happened in 2008. It happened in 2020. It will happen again. The stock market is at all-time highs. Real estate is at all-time highs. Everything is expensive. The media celebrates this. The economy is booming. But if you don't own stocks or real estate, you're being left behind. This is by design. When the government prints money, it doesn't cause uniform inflation. It causes asset inflation. Stocks go up. Real estate goes up. Bitcoin goes up. But wages barely budge. This creates a wealth gap. Those who own assets get richer. Those who only have labor get poorer. From 2009 to 2024, the Federal Reserve printed $8 trillion. The stock market went from 6,500 to 42,000. That's a 546% increase. Did productivity increase? 546%? Did companies become 5 times better? No. The money supply increased and it flowed into assets. But here's who benefits. The top 10% of Americans own 89% of all stocks. The bottom 50% own just 1% of stocks. When the stock market goes up, the wealthy get richer. When it crashes, they have reserves to buy more. The cycle continues. Real estate is the same story. When interest rates are low and money is printed, real estate prices explode. From 2020 to 2024, median home prices increased 47%. Did houses get better? No. The money got worse. But if you already own property, you got wealthier. If you were trying to buy your first house, you got priced out. This creates generational wealth inequality. Baby boomers bought houses for $30,000 in 1975. Those houses are now worth $600,000. They made $570,000 doing nothing. Meanwhile, millennials and Gen Z can't afford to buy at today's prices. The wealth gap between generations is the largest in American history, and government monetary policy created it. The Federal Reserve claims they're trying to help the economy, but their policies only help asset owners. The economist Thomas Piketty proved that when the return on capital exceeds economic growth, wealth inequality increases. The Fed has engineered exactly that scenario. Capital returns 10% per year. Economic growth is 2%. The gap widens every year. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street now own significant shares of almost every major corporation. They control $20 trillion in assets. They're buying single-family homes in cash, outbidding regular families. This is only possible because of cheap money from the Federal Reserve. The government is enabling Wall Street to buy up America. And when you finally do manage to save money and invest, they tax the gains. You bought a stock for $1,000, you sold it for $2,000. They tax the $1,000 gain. But what if inflation was 50% during that time? Bare $2,000 only has the purchasing power of $1,333 in original dollars. You only made $333 in real terms, but they taxed you on $1,000. You're being taxed on phantom gains created by their own inflation. The banks collapsed. They made reckless bets. They failed. So what happened? The government bailed them out with $700 billion. Taxpayer money. Your money. The banks that caused the crisis got rescued. You got nothing? COVID pandemic. The economy shut down. Small businesses collapsed. So what happened? The government gave trillions to large corporations. Airlines got $50 billion. They spent the previous decade buying back their own stock instead of saving for emergencies. When crisis hit, taxpayers bailed them out. This is the fundamental scam. Profits are private. Losses are socialized. When companies make money, shareholders and executives get rich. When companies fail, taxpayers cover the losses. It's capitalism for the poor and socialism for the rich. The restaurant owner who took out a loan and failed loses everything. His house, his savings, his business. No bailout for him. But when JP Morgan Chase makes bad loans, the government steps in. The bank is too big to fail. They get rescued with your tax dollars. General Motors went bankrupt in 2009. They'd made terrible business decisions for decades. They should have failed and been replaced by better companies. Instead, the government spent $50 billion to bail them out. Why? Because of political connections. Because of lobbying. Because the system is rigged. After each bailout, the executives keep their jobs. They keep their bonuses. They promise to do better. Then they make the same mistakes again. Because why wouldn't they? They know the government will rescue them. This is called moral hazard. When you eliminate the risk of failure, you encourage reckless behavior. The 2008 bank bailouts cost taxpayers $498 billion. In the end, that's $1,500 for every American. A family of 4 paid $6,000 to bail out banks. Did those banks face any consequences? Did executives go to jail? No, they got bonuses. In 2009, while unemployment was at 10%, Wall Street paid $20 billion in bonuses. But it's not just banks. It's the entire corporate system. Boeing gets billions in government contracts and subsidies. Then their planes fall apart. Amazon pays zero federal income tax in 2018, despite $11 billion in profit. How? Tax breaks and subsidies from the government. ExxonMobil gets $600 million in annual subsidies while making $36 billion in profit. Meanwhile, you can't deduct your work clothes. You can't deduct your commute. You can't write off your lunch. But corporations deduct everything. Private jets, golf club memberships, luxury cars, business expenses. The rules are different for them than for you. The government claims these bailouts and subsidies protect jobs, but that's a lie. After bailouts, companies fire workers anyway. They automate, they move operations overseas. The bailouts protect shareholders and executives, not workers. The 2008 bailouts saved banks, but 10 million people lost their homes to foreclosure. Who was the bailout really for? You've worked for 40 years. You paid into Social Security every paycheck. You saved in your 401k. You did everything right. Now you're retired and you're broke. Welcome to the retirement crisis the government created. Social Security was created in 1935. Workers would pay in during their careers. They'd receive benefits in retirement. It was supposed to be insurance. But the government raided the Social Security Trust Fund. They spent the money on other programs. Now there's no fund, just IOUs. Social Security pays the average retiree $1,907 per month. That's $22,884 per year. Try living on that. Rent alone, in most cities, exceeds that. You worked your entire life. You paid in, and this is what you get. Meanwhile, government workers retire with pensions worth millions. The retirement age keeps increasing. It was 65, now it's 67, soon it will be 70. Why? Because the government can't afford the promises they made. They spent the money. Now they're changing the deal. You paid in expecting to retire at 65? Now they're telling you to work until 70. That's 5 extra years of work. That's fraud. 401k plans were supposed to solve this. Tax-advantaged retirement savings. Sounds great, but here's the trap. You save money your whole career, you don't pay taxes on contributions, then when you withdraw in retirement, you pay income tax. But what if tax rates are higher when you retire? You saved in a 15% bracket. You withdraw in a 25% bracket, the government wins again, and 401k plans are vulnerable to market crashes. Your nest egg depends on stock market performance. In 2008, the average 401k lost 25%. People who were about to retire lost a quarter of their savings. They had to keep working. The government's monetary policy caused the crash. You paid the price. Required minimum distributions are another scam. When you turn 73, the government forces you to withdraw money from your retirement accounts, even if you don't need it. Why? So they can collect taxes? They'll let you defer taxes during your career, but they make sure they collect before you die. It's not your retirement account. It's their deferred tax account. Pension funds are collapsing nationwide. Illinois owes $317 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. New Jersey owes $200 billion. California owes $1.5 trillion. These pensions will never be paid in full. Workers who were promised retirement security will get pennies on the dollar. The government made promises it never intended to keep. Meanwhile, members of Congress retire with full pensions after just 5 years of service. They vote themselves automatic pay raises. They have premium healthcare for life. They insider trade legally. They profit from the same system that's bankrupting you. They write the rules. Of course they write them in their favor. Let's add it up. Everything the government takes from you. Everything they manipulate to extract wealth. The full cost of government is far higher than your tax bill shows. Income tax, 25% of your income on average. That's 3 months of work. Social Security and Medicare, 7.65% of your income. 2 more weeks. State and local taxes, another 10% depending on where you live. Sales tax, 7% on average on everything you buy. Property tax, 1.1% of home value annually. Gas tax, 18.4 cents per gallon federal, plus state taxes. Inflation tax, 4 to 7% annually on all your savings. Add it all up, and the government takes approximately 50% of what you earn through visible and hidden taxes. Half. You work from January to June just to pay the government in various forms. Only July through December is actually yours. But here's what makes it worse. What do you get for that 50%? Infrastructure is crumbling. The American Society of Civil Engineers gives us infrastructure, AC grade. Roads are full of potholes. Bridges are collapsing. Public transit is a joke compared to other developed countries. Education is underfunded. Teachers pay for classroom supplies out of pocket. School buildings are deteriorating, but somehow there's money for new military equipment, for foreign aid, for congressional junkets to resort destinations. Healthcare is the most expensive in the world. Americans pay $12,555 per person annually, twice what other developed countries pay. But life expectancy is lower. Infant mortality is higher. You're paying more and getting less. Government efficiency is non-existent. The Pentagon has failed its audit every year since 2018. They coup hunt account for $2.3 trillion in expenditures. That's not fraud. Apparently, that's just normal operations. The government spent $350,000 on a study about whether Japanese quail are more sexually promiscuous on cocaine. Your tax dollars at work, and government debt keeps growing. The U.S. owes $36 trillion. That's $107,000 per citizen, $275,000 per taxpayer. This debt will never be repaid. It will be inflated away, which means your money will be devalued to pay for government overspending. You're paying twice, once through taxes, again through inflation. You might think this is incompetence, poor policy mistakes. It's not. The system is designed exactly this way, deliberately to extract maximum wealth from working people while enriching the connected elite. The Federal Reserve is not a government agency, it's a private banking cartel. Created in 1930 on Jekyll Island by the largest banks, its purpose? To protect banks from failure, to enable government spending without raising taxes, to transfer wealth from savers to borrowers, from workers to owners. The tax code isn't complicated by accident. It's 6,871 pages long. Why? Because complexity enables loopholes. Loopholes that wealthy people exploit. If you're rich, you hire accountants and lawyers to find every deduction, every credit, every offshore strategy. If you're middle class, you use TurboTax and pay full price. Student loans can't be discharged in bankruptcy because banks lobbied for that law. Credit card companies can charge usurious rates because they lobbied to eliminate caps. Pharmaceutical companies can charge $1,000 for insulin because they lobbied against price controls. Every policy that hurts you was written by someone who profits from it. Members of Congress are legally allowed to insider trade. They receive classified briefings on economic policy. Then they trade stocks based on that information. They're not regulating their former employers. They're protecting them. Campaign finance ensures politicians serve donors, not voters. The average Senate campaign costs $15 million. That money comes from corporations, banks, billionaires. Politicians serve whoever pays them. You get one vote every few years. Donors have access every single day. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. It's designed to keep you broke, to keep you working, to keep you in debt, to prevent you from accumulating wealth. Because if you're wealthy, you're independent. If you're broke, you're compliant. Here's the truth. They'll never teach you in school. Inflation isn't necessary. Countries have operated on sound money for centuries. Gold and silver held their value for thousands of years. Inflation only exists because governments want to spend without raising taxes. It's a choice. Taxes don't have to be this high. Switzerland has a much smaller government and lower taxes. Yet better healthcare, better infrastructure, better quality of life. The US doesn't have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. But cutting spending means cutting government power, so they'll never do it. You don't need the government for retirement. If you could invest your Social Security contributions privately, you'd retire wealthy. A 25-year-old making $50,000 who invests 12.4% annually would have $2.5 million by retirement. Social Security will pay them $22,000 per year. You're forced into the worst option. The wealth gap isn't because of capitalism. It's because of government intervention. Free markets don't create billionaires who pay zero taxes. Free markets don't bail out failed companies. Free markets don't print money and inflate asset prices. The government created the wealth gap through monetary manipulation and regulatory capture. Every economic crash was caused or worsened by government policy. The Great Depression, the Federal Reserve contracted money supply by 30%. The 2008 crisis, government-sponsored entities Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac enabled subprime lending. The 2020 crash, government lockdowns destroyed small businesses while propping up large corporations. The government cannot give you anything it hasn't first taken from someone else. Every benefit, every program, Every subsidy is funded by confiscating wealth from productive people. They don't create wealth. They redistribute it, usually to their friends and supporters. You can't opt out of the system entirely, but you can protect yourself. First, understand that your currency is being debased. Every dollar you hold loses value. Minimize your cash holdings. Keep only what you need for emergencies. Store wealth and assets that government can't inflate away easily. Real estate can hedge against inflation if you buy at reasonable prices, but not in a bubble. Stocks provide ownership in productive companies, but be careful of overvalued markets. Commodities like gold and silver have preserved wealth for thousands of years. Cryptocurrencies offer an alternative outside government control, but they're volatile and risky. Second, minimize your taxes legally. Max out retirement accounts. Use health savings accounts. Take every deduction you qualify for. If you can start a business, do it. Business owners have access to deductions, employees don't. The tax code is written to favor business owners and investors over workers. Third, avoid debt except for appreciating assets. Never carry credit card debt. Student loans should only be 4 degrees that pay. Don't buy cars you can't afford. Debt makes you a slave to the system. Cash and assets make you free. Fourth, increase your income faster than inflation. Change jobs every few years. Learn high-value skills. Start a side business. Your salary increases probably won't keep up with real inflation. You need to jump to new opportunities to maintain purchasing power. Fifth, educate yourself. The government depends on financial illiteracy. They want you confused about inflation, taxes, debt. Learn about money. Learn about economics. Learn about history. Knowledge is your only defense against manipulation. Most importantly, understand that the system is designed this way. You're not failing. You're not irresponsible. You're not lazy. The game is rigged. Once you understand that, you can make better decisions within the constraints you face.